Hi, my name is Tom Miles. This video is a summary or overview of Mexican immigration patterns and history through New Mexico in the Southwest. The video uses the Albuquerque Historical and Cultural Timeline as an organizing device. The red line goes through historical events in the United States, Mexico, and New Mexico through time. It's important to note that whole libraries of research and stories exist for each of the individual dates, topics, periods, and eras that are covered only briefly in this view from 30,000 feet. We'll begin in the period from 1400 to 1650. In the 1400s, some 40,000 Pueblo Indians lived in the Nuevo Mexico area. They had built early apartment structures seen in Chaco Canyon and Bandelier and complex irrigation systems. In 1536, the Spaniard Cabeza de Vaca mentions a populous country to the north with big houses and luxury goods. In 1539, the Franciscan priest Marcos de Niza and the black Moor Esteban lead an exploratory expedition north, seeking the fabled 7 cities of Cibola. In 1543 and 1546, major silver mines in Zacatecas, Mexico, pull Spanish and Mexican miners and explorers and their technology north. By the 1570s, Mexico City's population has reached 15,000, supports a university, and more than 20,000 imported African slaves are required. In 1598, Juan de Oñate extends El Camino Real northward by 700 miles and creates the first permanent Spanish settlement in Nuevo Mexico, and Franciscans begin establishing early missions. In 1608, the King of Spain makes Nuevo Mexico a Spanish royal province and gives Franciscans formal permission to create missions here. In 1630, more rich silver mines are found further north in Chihuahua on the Camino Real, stimulating further trade and population movement northward. In 1687, Jesuit missionaries expand into the Arizona area and the Pimeria Alta, which will create future commercial markets for Nuevo Mexico. And by 1720, Nuevo Mexicanos begin annual trading trips to Chihuahua and Durango. In 1763, the Treaty of Paris gives Spain control of the Louisiana Territory. In 1776, the Spanish Bourbon king Charles III creates the Military General Commandancy of Nueva España to protect northern mining from English and U.S. incursion. The territory includes Nuevo Mexico and Arizona areas. In 1800, Spain cedes New Orleans and the Louisiana Territory to the French. Just 3 short years later, the United States purchases the Louisiana Territory from France. 7 years after that, in 1810, Mexico claims independence from Spain. There are large debates over whether to become a monarchy or a republic. At the time, the Mexican territory extends from Guatemala to Oregon. In 1821, the Mexican Republic opens trade with the United States, and the Santa Fe Trail is open to trade with the eastern U.S. In 1835, Anglo-Texans rebel against the Mexican government and create the Lone Star Republic. And 10 years later, in 1845, the U.S. annexes Texas, which Mexico declares an act of war, triggering the Mexican-American War. The 1848 Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ends the war, with the U.S. taking New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, California, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo gives Mexican citizens 1 year to choose U.S. citizenship, and the vast majority do so. Massive loss of territory creates economic problems in Mexico. The Gadsden Purchase of 1854 averts another war with Mexico and adds 45,000 square miles to southern New Mexico and Arizona. The 1849 California Gold Rush begins drawing population from the east and from Mexico. Many Mexicans with mining skills had already moved throughout what at that time was just northern Mexico. The territory of New Mexico is created in 1850, which then includes Arizona. In 1879, the railroad begins drawing Mexican workers north into New Mexico, and they mix with Chinese laborer immigrants and African American laborers freed in the Civil War. Also in the 1880s, low worker pay begins drawing major capital investment and new technologies to northern Mexico and opens modern mining and agricultural enterprises. In 1882, the U.S.-Chinese Exclusion Act dramatically reduces Chinese immigration for 60 years, but similar restrictions on Mexicans had not yet been created until the 1930s Mexican Repatriation Program and Operation Wetback in 1954. In the 1900s, Mexican social and economic conditions worsened, causing many Mexican citizens to migrate to the U.S. Interesting New Mexico asides include 1911 New Mexico Alien Land Act prohibiting Asians from owning land. 1912 New Mexico becomes the 47th state. And in 1916, Mexican revolutionary Pancho Villa raids in southern New Mexico. An estimated 10% of the Mexican population is killed in infighting during the 1910-1917 Mexican Revolution. Then from 1917 to 1930, ongoing political and economic breakdowns continued to stimulate Mexican migration to the U.S. From 1929 through 1937, the Great U.S. Depression causes a massive Mexican repatriation program. Some 400,000 to 500,000 Mexicans leave the U.S. due to high unemployment, fear of deportation, and encouragement by welfare agencies and the Mexican government. Many were legal residents and U.S. citizens. 5 years later, and for 22 years, from 1942 to 1964, the U.S. Bracero guest worker wage and working condition agreements with Mexican government during World War II provide some 300,000 Mexican braceros as labor resources. The employer use of illegals soon begins worsening wages and working conditions. In response, in 1952, Cesar Chavez begins his 25-year campaign for civil rights for workers and Hispanics. In 1954, the Eisenhower administration implements Operation Wetback in the Southwest, and an estimated 3 million Mexicans are deported. The Christian Science Monitor reported that the rise in illegal border crossings has been accompanied by a curious relaxation in ethical standards extending all the way from farmer exploiters of this contraband to the highest levels of federal government. In 1964, the Bracero program gives way to the Maquiladora program, aimed at utilizing lower wages and looser working conditions south of the border. This program continues into the present time. In 1965, the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act ushers in immigration of people with needed skills or close relatives of U.S. citizens, and this includes relatives living in Mexico. 1994 brings about the North American Free Trade Agreement between Mexico, the U.S., and Canada, easing trade tariffs and some immigration. In 2000, globalizing corporations moved many maquiladora jobs out of Mexico to Taiwan, China, South America, and East Asia. In 2005, California passes the Apology Act for the 1930s Mexican Repatriation Program, officially recognizing the unconstitutional removal and coerced immigration of United States citizens and legal residents of Mexican descent. In 2008 and 2009, worldwide economic turmoil begins returning maquiladora jobs to Mexico, and a second informal Mexican repatriation begins due to U.S. depression, slowdown, and loss of jobs. And here are a couple of intriguing closing thoughts. In 1910, foreign-born were 14.7% of the population. In 2003, foreign-born had dropped by 20% to 11.7% of the population. Today's typical U.S. woman bears 1.93 children. This is below the 2.1% replacement rate required to keep a population stable over time with no new immigration.